In this video, we are going to look at how to set up a scenario where we have a rope and we've got to tie the rope to something to be able to get down. This is kind of like the puzzle, I think, in Zork with the dome room where you had to tie the rope to the railing, and then you could drop down to the engravings cave or the altar or something like that. Can't quite remember. So let's look at the scenario, the setup. We have a balcony. And the balcony is described as having a stone railing that prevents you from falling. And in the middle of the balcony stands a large statue. So what we're going to have to do here is tie the rope to the statue, and then we can go down. So we've got balcony and below balcony, just as you are standing below a balcony. We have a coil of rope that is on the balcony, and it is portable. Now, the stone railing and the statue. What are those? Those are scenery objects, because in the room balcony here, we mentioned that there's a stone railing and that there's a large statue. Now, the player can't take the railing and they can't take the statue. That is part of being a scenery object. So if something is a scenery object, it can't be portable. You can't carry around the sand from the beach unless you implement the sand as a separate object. Let's say the waves at the beach. You can't take the waves. You can't take the sun, right? You can't take the trees in the forest. That's scenery. So a scenery object is not portable. It's just sort of there to be looked at. But in this case, we're going to interact with it. So the statue and the stone railing are both scenery objects on the balcony. So when I do this, I run my game here. The balcony and the statue are not printed out. That's what happens to scenery objects. Scenery objects are not listed as part of the room. Now, how would the player know that they're there? Well, because it says you're standing on a balcony. Fortunately, a stone railing prevents you from falling. In the middle of the balcony stands a large statue. So we've implemented the statue and the railing as objects so the player can interact with them, but we've marked them scenery. We don't need to have them explicitly listed out because we mentioned that in the room description. So I should be able to type examine statue, right? It says you've noticed nothing unexpected. That's fine because at least the statue is a separate object. And the same thing with the railing. The railing is finely crafted stone, right? So the railing and the statue are both in the balcony as scenery objects. And then notice we have our up-down connections. The balcony can go down to the below balcony, and below balcony can go up to balcony. So this is going to be kind of a puzzle where you can drop down and climb back up. If you don't want to be able to get back up, then set the up direction on the lower room to you can't go that way, and you won't be able to go back up. All right, so let's think about how we're going to get this to work. We are going to need a variable. Oh, and let's see, do we have a variable? I'm going to make a variable called rope tied. So we're going to have to keep track of whether the player has tied the rope to the statue. So if that's 0, we'll say no or false, and if it's 1, we'll say, well, it's true. All right, so there. I'm going to make a variable called rope tied and default it to 0. All right, so now let's go back to our verb checks. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a check before we go down from the balcony. We're going to say, hey, is the rope tied? And if the answer is no, then we'll print, it's too far to jump or it's too far down and stop. So let's make a check called, check rope. And I'm going to click add check function. And then in here, let's look at our options here. I added one, check for a rope before going down, right? So you can take this and modify it. So it drops in a fair amount of code here. So it's going to check the player's location. So wherever it says hi room, you want to change that to be your room. So in this case, for me, that's the balcony. And if the rope tied is false, or false is a real word, that gets just that turns into 0. So we could say that's exactly the same thing as if the rope tied is 0. No. So then print stop, or the drop is too far, and then stop. So if we try to go down, that's what we're gonna hook this function up to. So we're going to say when we go down, when are we at the balcony? Okay, if we're at the balcony, now if the rope isn't tied, print the drop is too far and stop. If the rope is tied, we'll say, okay, you climb down the rope. So now what we want to do is wire this check function up to the verb down. So I'm going to select down here in the list on the left, and I'm going to select that check rope, and I'm going to click add. So now anytime I go down, I'm going to do the rope check. Now let's make sure I got that player.balcony rope tied. So that's we're going to check that variable, and that's it. So we don't have to change anything else in there. You can change these the text if you want. All right. So let me save this, and then let's launch the little client here. So now I'm going to type the word vars, V-A-R-S, and hit enter. And this is going to dump out the variables of the game. So you can see that rope tied is set to 0. So when I go down, if I'm on the balcony, okay, then we're going to go inside and run this code. If rope tied is 0, print the drop is too far and stop. So let's try to go down and see if it works. The drop is too far. Awesome. So that check on going down failed, right? Should I be allowed to go down? No, because that variable is set to 0. Now, also just to see what would happen if, just to test this out the other way, I'm going to go to this game start function here, and I'm going to put in, what is it, rope tied. This code runs when your game starts up. So I'm going to force that variable to be 1. So now let's watch what happens the other way. So let me type vars here, and you can see that rope tied got set to 1 in that game start function. So now if I go down, it says you climb down the rope. Now we're at below balcony. So that variable is controlling, this variable rope tied is controlling whether the player's allowed to go down from the balcony. Okay, so now that we've tested out that verb check, I'm going to delete the code for this that game start. I can probably just leave this blank. I don't think it's going to matter. All right. So let me save this, and just to test that works. So if I type vars, rope tied should be 0 because we deleted that code from our game start function. Cool. Now let's add the tying the rope to the statue. So tie is not a built-in verb. If you go to verbs, you will see that tie is not, you could search through here, tie is not one of these built-in verbs. So let's add it. I'm going to add the verb tie, click add, there we go. And just to be safe, I'll save this. Now we get into the verb checks. The verb checks decide or how a verb needs to be used. So let's go to verb checks here, and let's select the verb tie. So if we want to tie something, or if we want to use the verb tie, we have to say what we want to tie. We have to at least have a noun, tie the rope or something like that. So they have to supply a direct object, which is check dodge supplied, which is my internal name, which is terrible, and I promise to fix that some year. So if you want to use the verb tie, we're saying you check that there's actually a noun, tie something, and let's also make, let's see, I don't know, tie something, tie rope. Let's say you have to supply a second noun too, it's an indirect object. And then if we want to tie something, we should have to have it, right? We should have to have that first noun. That's check have direct object, right? So we have to have the thing, tie the rope to the statue. We have to have that rope. And then let's say that we have to see the second noun. If we can see the indirect object. So that we're saying if we want to tie, use the verb tie, we have to supply 2 nouns, and we have to have the first noun, and we have to see the second noun. And I promise to make these more human readable at some point. So now anytime we use the verb tie, all of these checks are going to get run. So watch this. If I go to test the verb, all right, so now, before if I had typed tie, it would say I don't know that verb, but now it should say missing noun, right? Because, hey, we're supposed to tie something. Tie rope. Should say you don't have that. Okay, so there's that check that if we want to tie something, we have to have it. Take rope. Tie rope. You don't see that here. Okay, so interesting. It's like, you don't see, I think what it's saying is it doesn't see the statue, which is a little bit of a bug. But let's go. It's really not going to slow us down. Let's go add a function here called tie rope. And I'm going to click add. And I've got a code stub already made for this scenario, the tying the rope, because this is a common adventure game thing. It's down here. Tie a rope to something so you can climb down. And it's below the capture window, but I'll just select it. It's in there. If you don't see it, just get the latest version of Lantern. So what this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, if rope tied is false, then we tie the rope to the gargoyle. Or so, or I don't know. We tie the rope to the statue. And now we're going to set our variable to 1. Now what we want to do is, if the player had to have the rope before, but by tying it to the statue, now they don't have it anymore. So what we're going to do is put the rope in the balcony. So this says rope's location equals the balcony, because now the player doesn't have the rope anymore. We've taken the rope out of the player's inventory. And we could also, maybe we don't want the player to be able to take the rope back, so maybe we can say, this is not the easiest thing, come on, rope dot portable equals 0. We have to set that bit to 0. Now we can't take the rope back. And we could change the room description to mention that the rope is now part of the room description. We could say that this is a balcony with a statue and there's a rope that hangs down below, or we could put an initial description on the rope too, which maybe we could do. So let's try that. That might be easier than changing the room description. We can try both ways. So maybe I'll say. You know what? I'm going to comment this line out. What I'll do is I'll say rope dot a rope dangles from the statue to the floor below. All right. So what we're going to do is now make the rope not portable oh, you know what? If we're going to do that, let's not make the rope scenery. Otherwise, it will be invisible. So there's a bunch of ways to do this, but let's try this now. So let's make a sentence. So I'm going to say when the verb is, I got tie in there a million times, it's great. If the verb is tie and the first noun is rope, the coil of rope, tie the rope to, if the preposition is to, and the second noun is the statue. Tie the coil of rope to the statue. Call my tie rope function. It's at the bottom of that drop-down list off the window instead. Click add. Okay, so now when I tie the coil of rope to the statue, it should work. Let's hope that it does. All right. Well, I got a syntax error, and let's go back and look at that function. In my game, it's actually coil of rope. The thing is not called rope. So the nouns here, the object names, have to be exactly what you have in your game. So coil of rope. And maybe we want to switch it out with a different rope object since it's not really coiled anymore. But let's save this and try it again. It does not like coil of rope tied. Close. That's not right. Rope tied. Sorry. I changed that one and I shouldn't have. This is my variable. I'm setting my variable here to say that I've tied the rope. All right. Now. Again, same thing. I didn't change. This needs to be coil of rope. So I need to make my object names match you need to make your object names that you type in your code match the ones in your game. Save that. Not my day. A rope dangles from the statue below. Unknown variable. Coil of. Oh, God, I call it coil of rope. This is painful. There we go. Why is it doing that to me? All right, now let's launch the player. Okay, there we go. So now let me take the rope, and I'm going to tie the rope to the statue. You tie the rope to the statue, and now I should be able to go down because that rope tied variable got set to 1, right? So there's our rope tied variable. Oh, and one thing we need to check. Let's watch. Let's try this again. And where's our little window? Oh, come on, test, run. Okay. If I tie the coil to the statue, take rope, tie rope to statue. You tie the rope to the statue. Now if I look, see, notice here a rope dangles from the statue to the floor below. You see we changed the initial description on the rope, and if we try to take the rope now, it says you can't take that because we set its portability bit to be 0. So now I can go down to the balcony, and maybe down in the balcony I want to change the description of the balcony to mention that a rope goes back up. We could do that. We could do that too. So let's look at that. After we tie the rope, what we could do now is let's go to the, I think it was called lower or below balcony. That's the name of that object. I could go there and I could set below balcony dot d tab dot description equals you are at the bottom of a balcony. You are below a balcony. A rope dangles, from the railing, from high above or something. And now the player would know that they could get back. So let's just test that works. So if I tie the rope, take rope, tie rope to statue. Although I'm not sure why I had to have the statue if I could have just tied it to the railing. So maybe only put one thing that for the player to be able to tie the rope to. And then let me go down and notice here the balcony. It says you are below a balcony. A rope dangles from high above, and that's my clue that I can go back up. Also, maybe in that tie rope function we could say you tie the rope to the statue and throw it over the edge where it reaches the ground or something, where it almost reaches the ground. All right, sorry, you have to watch me type. All right, so now when I run this, let's try it. Take the rope. Take rope. Tie rope. Tie rope to statue. You tie the rope to the statue and throw it over the edge where it almost reaches the ground. Okay, right, and now I can go down. So there's climbing down a rope. One thing that you might want to try to figure out is, so now if I want to try, maybe I want to add climb as a verb. I want to be able to climb the rope, right? So that might, but maybe the player would also just be able to try up. So heck, let's go back. Let's do it again. Let's add. Go to verbs, and let's add climb as a verb. And click add. Oops, the verb climb says I already added the verb. I guess I clicked I guess I clicked twice, or maybe it's a built-in verb. All right, so let's see if we can find the verb climb in here. And no, tie. Well, it said it was there. Oh, yep, there it is. It's a built-in verb. All right, so let's say if we want to climb something, we have to say what we want to climb, so they have to supply a noun, and they have to, let's say they have to see that noun. All right, so now the problem is, I think you see where this is going, what if the player types climb the rope? Well, the problem is the rope is in, the rope is not in the location where the player is. The rope is technically back up on the balcony. So we kind of need another object called rope, and then we need to move it into the into that room. So let me add another object here, and I'm just going to call it rope, and oh yeah, sure, okay, and we'll say, you know, the rope leads up, or something like that, and let's put it, we'll put it off screen, and we'll make it scenery, and in our function here, when we tie the rope, let's actually move the rope's dot location. We'll move the rope to below balcony. So, and we can test this out. Take rope, tie rope to statue, and then down. We should actually see, yeah, okay, so we are below a balcony, rope dangles from high above. I should be able to examine the rope and see the rope leads up. There's my rope. All right, so I had to basically have two ropes, like the rope that's up top and the rope that gets moved into the other room down below so the player can climb it. All right, so now I'm in business. So let me make a function called climb rope, click add, and how are we going to do this? Well, we can just say, print you climb up the rope, ... and then let's put the player, player pl tab dot location tab equals the balcony. So now the player will be up on the balcony, and then we want to look. So we want to run the look command because now we've moved the player to a new location. All right, so now I just have to add a sentence, and I'll say when the verb is climb, which there it is if the verb is climb, and the noun is, and I have to be careful which rope. I don't want to climb the coil of rope. I want to climb up just the one called rope, which is down in the lower balcony. When I climb that, then I want to call my climb rope function instead. So when I type climb rope, I want to call my climb rope function. Let's test it out. All right, so now I'm going to take rope, tie rope to statue. All right, down. Okay, so now remember I could examine the rope here. It says the rope leads up. This is a different rope object, and now I should be able to say climb rope. It says you climb up the rope, and now we're back at the balcony. So, so there you go. There's how to get climbing, not only up and down and tying the rope, but also how to add the verb climb and get that going. So the trick is with these verb checks, when you add a verb or you have an existing verb, you can control using the checks how that is implemented. But basically, there's a whole bunch of parts to this. First part is just get this variable called rope tied, and then add that verb check for going down. So say, hey, as the player's in the right room and the rope has not been tied, then do the error message stuff. So set up that check so the player can't move unless the rope is tied. Then add your functions and your sentences so that the player can tie the rope to something and then go down. So that check will pass. So there you go. There's how to climb down a rope.